I'm John McKee, editor of Messianic Apologetics. Messianicapologetics.net. And I would like to welcome you to this episode of Messianic Insider, your theology and news roundup for August the 12th, 2025. Today is Tuesday, and we have a somewhat longer theology review as we will be going through the uncomfortable yet very important topic of apostasy. Our teaching for today is taken from our ministry publication. I know you've seen it for the past week or so. When Will the Messiah Return? The Dangers of Pre-Tribulationism. Because, after all, the apostasy is a major sign of when the Messiah will return. And perhaps unlike some of the other major end-time signs out there, the rise of the beast, the New World Order, things like that, apostasy is actually something we as God's people can prevent to some degree from people committing. So if apostasy, regardless of how it specifically manifests, is denial of the Lord, denial of his salvation, we can certainly prevent a great deal of that from happening in the lives of our fellow human beings, the lives of people who we love and who we care about. All right, let me switch windows very quickly, and we will get into our teaching. Yeah, so this is taken from chapter 7 of When Will the Messiah Return? Dangers of Pre-Tribulationism. This is from the When Will the Messiah Return part, and the topic is the Great Apostasy. How frequently is this discussed at your local Messianic congregation, synagogue, Bible study, Torah study? It is something, as I have said, can manifest in multiple ways. But today and recently, I do have to kind of share this with you, participating on social media, the rise in anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, people really rejecting Israel, people really rejecting Judaism. It is on the substantial rise in our world today. And I don't have any immediate, easy answer for you, but it's something which is going to contribute to apostasy against not just the one God of the universe, but the one God of Israel. And this is something which really stirs me in my spirit and my heart, because over the past several years, I have seen many people in my extended family who are liberal Protestants, really just embrace all of the very left-wing, hyper-liberal, social changes which we have seen. And yes, do I think that many of them are not just going to commit apostasy, but they are in apostasy? I do, and it disturbs me a great deal, as it should you, because you know people, family members, friends who are also in apostasy. All right, so we have a somewhat longer teaching to go through, but I think you're going to be able to pick up many, many points. Thinking about or contemplating the topic of apostasy is not necessarily, is not necessarily the most positive thing which someone could be doing. The biblical and historical record both indicate that apostasy against God, a denial of him and his ways, has been present since the very beginning, which should hopefully relieve at least some of the anxiety we may have about this. It's nothing new. Yet sometimes we need to have our consciences pricked regarding what the apostasy is, especially as we survey some of the things going on in the religious world today, both Messianic and Christian. Now is an excellent time for us to review once again what the prophesied great apostasy is, so that rather than being impartial to it, or worse yet, somehow being a part of it, we can all stand up as men and women of God who warn others against the torrent which is coming. Let us be those in a position to offer answers to people lost in sin, being all the things which Yeshua calls his followers to be. What is the apostasy? There are many passages of the Bible, both in the Tanakh and apostolic scriptures, which address the subject of apostasy. In the broadest sense, apostasy is a denial of God's authority and his ways, perhaps involving a revolt. Joshua 22:22 refers to a mered, or rebellion, revolt against, Brown Driver Briggs, the Lord, and how he would not come to save his people were they involved in such action. The mighty one, God, the Lord, the mighty one, God, the Lord. He knows, and may Israel itself know, if it was in rebellion, im bemered, or if in an unfaithful act against the Lord, do not save us this day. Joshua 22:22, New American Standard. The Greek Septuagint rendered mered as apostasia, which in an entirely secular context would mean defection from the Liddell Scott lexicon. We see that it is used by Plutarch of a political revolt. In the Apocrypha, apostasia was used to refer to Antiochus Epiphanes' forced conversion of the Jewish people to Greek religion. Then the king's officers who were enforcing the apostasy came to the city of Modin to make them offer sacrifice. 1 Maccabees 2:15, Revised Standard Version. Bible readers likewise see in the book of Acts a false charge made against the Apostle Paul. It was being claimed of him that he taught apostasy against the Torah. And they are instructed concerning thee, that apostasy from Moses thou dost teach to all Jews among the nations, saying, not to circumcise the children, nor after the customs to walk. Acts 21:21, Young's literal translation. The false charge against Paul was apostasian didaskes apa mooseos. Apostasy you teach from Moses. Paul would defend himself later, firmly attesting that these were false charges against him. To counter the libel, Paul affirmed, having obtained help from God, I stand to this day testifying both to small and great, stating nothing but what the prophets and Moses said was going to take place. Acts 26:22, New American Standard. Likewise, at the end of Acts, readers see Paul at a synagogue in Rome, and Luke records he was explaining to them by solemnly testifying about the kingdom of God and trying to persuade them concerning Yeshua from both the law of Moses and from the prophets from morning until evening. Acts 28:23, New American Standard. Surely, if Paul did deride the authority of the Torah and the prophets, he would not have expelled the effort to proclaim the good news from these texts. The Apostle Paul himself talked about apostasy in the epistle of 2 Thessalonians, a letter written to specifically calm down a group of people who thought that the day of the Lord was imminently forthcoming. The apostasy is listed among a series of events which must occur prior to the return of Yeshua. Now we request you, brethren, with regard to the coming of our Lord Yeshua the Messiah and our gathering together to him, that you not be quickly shaken from your composure or be disturbed either by a spirit or a message or a letter as if from us to the effect that the day of the Lord has come. Let no one in any way deceive you, for it will not come unless the apostasy comes first and the man of lawlessness is revealed, the son of destruction, who opposes and exalts himself above every so-called God or object of worship, so that he takes his seat in the temple of God, displaying himself as being God. Do you not remember that while I was still with you, I was telling you these things? And you know what restrains him now, so that in his time he will be revealed. For the mystery of lawlessness is already at work. Only he who now restrains will do so until he is taken out of the way. Then that lawless one will be revealed, whom the Lord will slay with the breath of his mouth and bring to an end by the appearance of his coming. That is, the one whose coming is in accord with the activity of Satan, with all power and signs and false wonders, and with all the deception of wickedness for those who perish, because they did not receive the love of the truth so as to be saved. For this reason, God will send upon them a deluding influence, so that they will believe what is false, in order that they all may be judged who did not believe the truth, but took pleasure in wickedness. 2 Thessalonians 2, 1 through 12, New American Standard. Paul listed a number of things which are to take place before the coming of the Lord, and he made the specific point to tell his audience, don't you remember that when I was with you, I used to tell you these things? New International Version. Perhaps due to the denseness of his audience and their inability to hear, Paul had to repeat himself yet again. As mundane as such a clause may appear to us some 2 millennia later, let us not be those who have to hear this over and over again, so as to not get the point of what Paul communicated. A summary of what will take place includes Number 1, the apostasy. Number 2, the revealing of the man of lawlessness. Number 3, the man of lawlessness will exalt himself, taking a seat in God's temple. Number 4, the removal of the restraining influence. Number 5, the present, for then and for now, activity of the mystery of lawlessness. Number 6, the end of the man of lawlessness's rule. And number 7, the sending of a deluding influence by God upon the world. Each one of these phenomena could be expanded into a book chapter, or at least their own article or research paper. But there are some specific things, particularly as they concern apostasia, the apostasy, with the definite article of which Paul spoke, which need to be considered. Undeniably, as consistent with some of the previous examples of apostasy seen, this end-time apostasy is related to lawlessness. The significant end-time apostasy is joined in 2 Thessalonians 2:3 with the unveiling of anthropos tes anomias, or the man of lawlessness. The complete Jewish Bible renders this with the man who separates himself from Torah. Revelation 13:6 describes him as one who opened his mouth in blasphemies against God to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, that is, those who dwell in heaven. New American Standard. Certainly, it would not be a far stretch to suggest that these blasphemies also include deriding God's Torah and his instruction. Indeed, as Daniel 7:25 says, he will speak out against the Most High and wear down the saints of the Highest One, and he will intend to make alterations in times and in law, and they will be given into his hand for a time, times, and half a time. Daniel 7:25, New American Standard. The Aramaic clause of importance is the Hashnaya Zimnin Vedat, shall think to change the times and the law. English Standard Version. Dot is an important term to consider because in Scripture, particularly in the book of Esther, it is largely seen regarding secular state laws as opposed to the Torah of Moses. Thus, it could be said that the man of lawlessness will be responsible for instituting laws which will curtail and make it difficult for God's people to keep his Torah in the last days. A key feature of this apostasy is seen in Paul's assertion. The secret power of lawlessness is already at work. 2 Thessalonians 2:7, New International Version. What ta musterion tes anamias actually is, has confounded even the best interpreters because it regards a mystery. While many proposals regarding mystery have been made, I personally think that it is best for us not to read too much into Paul's words and simply regard the manifestation of such lawlessness as simply boggling the mind of those who remain faithful. Yeshua himself prophesied, because lawlessness is increased, most people's love will grow cold. Matthew 24:12, New American Standard. Certainly, if one denies the continued authority or relevance of God's Torah, then denial of the command to love him and one's neighbor can definitely follow. Deuteronomy 6:4 and 5, Leviticus 19:18, also Mark 12:28-31, Matthew 22:35-40, Luke 10:25-28. It may be that the mystery of lawlessness is a mystery because it will actually be practiced by those who would be the last ones a person would expect, those who claim faith in God. The Apostle Paul stated something very significant about the man of lawlessness, which cannot be downplayed. He said, "The coming of the lawless one will be in accordance with the work of Satan displayed in all kinds of counterfeit miracles, signs, and wonders." 2 Thessalonians 2:9, New International Version. This fully concurs with Yeshua's words, "For false messiahs and false prophets will appear and produce great signs and omens, to lead astray, if possible, even the elect." Matthew 24:24, New Revised Standard. Supernatural signs, demonic supernatural signs, will attend the arrival of the anti-Messiah or Antichrist. Revelation 13:13-15. And in the event that we might think that such warnings are only consigned to the final days with the anti-Messiah, the Apostle John said, "Just as you heard that Antichrist is coming, even now many Antichrists have appeared." 1 John 2:18, New American Standard. Many anti-Messiah prototypes, all the way back to the Pharaoh of the Exodus and forward to Haman, Antiochus Epiphanes, various Roman emperors, various popes, Napoleon Bonaparte, Adolf Hitler, and Joseph Stalin, among others, have been seen throughout history displaying the characteristics which the anti-Messiah will display in abundance. To say that we have been given ample warning would be an understatement. Why were these warnings given by Paul? Why were they given? To discourage lawlessness and discourage people from denying the relevancy of God's Torah? Surely they were. The type of lawlessness inaugurated by the anti-Messiah will be a complete dismissal of God's high standard of morality and ethics. There will be no family loyalties, as is clearly seen in Yeshua's word. Brother will betray brother to death, and a father his child, and children will rise up against parents and have them put to death. Mark 13:12, New American Standard. No one will respect the sanctity and value of human life, as Revelation 13:4 asks, "Who is like the beast and who is able to wage war with him?" New American Standard, with many dying under his reign of despotism. Far be it from this lawlessness being people who fail to see some relevance to kosher or the appointed times. It will go beyond denying you shall have no other gods before me. Exodus 20, verse 3. It will be a time not unlike the days of Noah where the earth was filled with violence. Genesis 6:11, both references New American Standard. But as bad as this kind of lawlessness is, Paul gave one of the most sobering words which I have ever seen in the Bible. He said, God sends upon them a strong delusion to make them believe what is false. 2 Thessalonians 2:11, Revised Standard Version. Can you believe it? God himself is the agent which will actively send the Greek pempe, the energeon planes, or working of delusion. Young's literal translation. The Lord is going to make sure that those who are his are completely loyal to him, in order that there might be a clear distinction between his people and those who are not his people. And do take notice of the reason why this strong delusion is going to be sent. They refuse to love the truth and so be saved. 2 Thessalonians 2:10, Revised Standard Version. The text is clear that the cause of the apostasy is lawlessness or a denial of God's Torah instruction. But here, because of rejecting God's truth, those who apostatize are unable to be saved. By no means is Paul suggesting that keeping the Torah will result in salvation. On the contrary, a redeemed person is not saved by works, but instead is called to good works following salvation. Ephesians 2:8-10. And the Torah itself never suggests that by keeping it, eternal life will result. It is in the rejection of what the Torah points to that salvation will be lost. The apostasy is to be attended with false signs and wonders and a false Messiah. Those who fall prey to this are those who took pleasure in wickedness. 2 Thessalonians 2:12, New American Standard. Paul had false claims issued against him that he taught apostasy from the Torah, and he refuted it by affirming that the messianic expectation he held was consistent with what the law and the prophets proclaim. It is not by any means inappropriate to suggest that the end-time apostasy and its accompanying lawlessness is an outright denial of what the apostolic scriptures affirm concerning Yeshua. These are my words which I spoke to you while I was still with you, that all things which are written about me in the law of Moses and the prophets and the Psalms must be fulfilled. Luke 22:24, New American Standard. Philip found Nathanael and said to him, "We have found him of whom Moses in the law and also the prophets wrote, Yeshua of Nazareth, the son of Joseph." John 1:45, New American Standard. But this I admit to you, that according to the way which they call a sect, I do serve the God of our fathers, believing everything that is in accordance with the law and that is written in the prophets, having a hope in God, which these men cherish themselves, that there shall certainly be a resurrection of both the righteous and the wicked. Acts 24:14-15, New American Standard. By being engulfed in gross lawlessness, denying God's Torah, such people will deny the quintessential message which it proclaims, the Messiah who was sent to save them from their sins. The beginnings of the good news are witnessed in the promise made to Abraham, Genesis 12:3, Galatians 3:8, and move forward throughout the unfolding of salvation history, Hebrews 1:1. while a definite consequence of rejecting God's Torah is practicing lawlessness and falling into gross immorality and licentiousness. An even more definite consequence is rejecting the one who is spoken of by the Torah and prophets, the one who will enact immediate judgment upon the anti-Messiah when he returns. 2 Thessalonians 2:8. Apostasy in Christianity. Apostasy has been present ever since the very beginning, and examples of it are certainly seen throughout the apostolic scriptures. There are many evangelical Protestants today who look at a passage like 2 Thessalonians 2:1-12 and are absolutely horrified at many of the things which are taking place in today's contemporary church. Through the advent of much of the charismatic movement, so-called signs and wonders have been taking place which have absolutely no precedent in the Bible, or for that same matter, most of church history. Many of you can no doubt remember some of the quote-unquote moves of the Spirit as seen in the 1990s, via holy laughing, or people falling down backward, or even people barking like dogs to the Lord. I might be able to believe that God wants us to laugh from time to time from the joy in our hearts, but the only people I see in Scripture who fell down backward were the Roman soldiers who arrested Yeshua, John 18:6. At the transfiguration of Yeshua, when the disciples heard this, they fell face down to the ground and were terrified, Matthew 17:6, New American Standard. But I am sorry, people barking like dogs, thinking that they are worshiping God, belong in straitjackets and in a lunatic asylum. I do not want to be perceived as someone who believes that the gifts are dead. I am not one of those people, as I do believe that the legitimate gifts of the Holy Spirit are accessible today. But the charismatic movement has made a very easy target of itself, often devoid of much of a biblical foundation. Some would accuse me of not expecting much from God, but all too frequently, we miss out on the great signs and wonders which come by experiencing God's love, peace, and joy. After all, the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Galatians 5:22 and 23, New American Standard. Can we at all be content when we have these things manifest in our lives and in the ecclesia as a whole? For some, this is not enough. The Holy Spirit has to be a yelping junkyard dog rather than a quiet voice, which requires sensitivity and patience. A much more significant issue in evangelical Protestantism today concerns the rise of lawlessness. Many Christians today do not know what to do about the Old Testament law. Many believe that it has been superseded and replaced by a so-called law of Christ, based in an interpretation of Galatians 6:2, which is simply akin to loving others. Many believe that the Torah has important biblical history, even accurate history, but that it was just for ancient Israel and thus the Jewish people today. And there are many who believe that the weightier matters of God's Torah, primarily its teachings on ethics and morality, are as true for today as they have been since Mount Sinai. It is mostly among this third group, even while not particularly emphasizing the finer points of the Torah as messianics, which is absolutely incensed by some of the debates occurring in the church today. These Christians do speak out against other Christians who seek to deride the importance of God's revelation in the Pentateuch. Consider the response of Walter C. Kaiser in 5 Views on Law and Gospel to one who believes that the Torah has been abolished. And this is from 1996. So this is 29 years old. Quote, ultimately, this teacher is bound only by what is clearly repeated in New Testament teaching. What advice will he give on marriage to close relatives? Leviticus 18. Involvement with forms of witchcraft and various forms of the occult. Leviticus 19. the case for capital punishment, Genesis 9, or the proscription against abortion, Exodus 21. Did Americans not learn in 1973 that a New Testament exclusivistic ethic landed us squarely in one of the largest legalized murdering ventures in recent times? Now, and this is 1996, exceeding Hitler's 6 million Jews sent up a chimney by 4 times over, with some 24 million babies going in a bucket. What will it take to wake us up to the narrowness of our views? Unquote. 5 views on law and gospel. And indeed, the numbers of abortion are much greater now in 2025. Indeed, abortion is just one of the most significant issues which causes many of today's evangelical Protestants to turn to the Old Testament and recapture a Torah ethic. The homosexual agenda and the debate over whether or not this lifestyle is acceptable in the eyes of God also drives many to turn to the Torah. And with the propagation of both of these things, many people are being driven away from God's law and toward lives where there are no boundaries. We need only look at all of the sexual scandals in today's church, a direct result of what happens when one derides the Bible's instruction and fails to discuss critical issues. When a person surveys some of the lawless activities in today's church, are they not aware that the church of 150 or even 50 to 60 years ago had a much higher view of the Old Testament law? While many Christian theologians held to the artificial view that God's commandments were subdivided between those which were moral or ceremonial, the integrity of the ethical and moral commandments were certainly upheld as a high standard to which believers were to strive to maintain. This has always been an emphasis of holiness movements throughout the ages. With the advent of dispensationalism and later German higher criticism, both in the 19th century, the relevance of the Torah's moral commandments came into question. The Torah, including the 10 Commandments, was surely given by God, but given only to the Jewish people. So say the dispensationalists. The new crop of liberal theologians would ask how we can even be sure of the accuracy of the Old Testament when there are so many contradictions within it and with the historical and the scientific record. Both have inflicted damage across the spectrum. One, even if accepting its divine origin, pigeonholes the Torah to just the Jewish people, and the other does not only deny the divine origins of the Torah, but even its Mosaic origins. A kind of apostasy which we are likely to begin to see occurring as we move more into the 21st century regards the overall erosion of the integrity of the scriptures. Liberalism and atheism have always existed. There are always people who have crises of faith and deny their creator as a result. Yet, with the advent of the internet, cable television, and even the mega bookstore, people have access to information today which they did not have access to in the past. Social media has made it even more complicated now. This information may be over a century and a half old in some cases, but it still challenges the Bible's teachings and accuracy. The pressure which is upon Christian clergy today is to be aware, as these things intensify every day with new websites, blogs, and venues of information popping up, and new and strange ideas circulating around the world. And with criticism against the historical reliability of the Bible, will undeniably come criticism against its scientific reliability as well. Okay, now we're getting into some complicated aspects of apostasy, and perhaps one might even say some forbidden waters. Apostasy in the Messianic movement? Question mark. It would be entirely inappropriate for us as Messianic believers to only look at some of the negative things going on in the Christian church today without also taking a look at ourselves. We should not be so naive so as to think that apostasy against God only affects the Christian world. Surely, if Christian leaders today have to be on top of their game so as to know the latest criticisms against the Bible, particularly the Tanakh, Old Testament, why, when you ask such questions of many Messianic leaders, do they often draw a blank stare? Some of the criticism against the Tanakh in today's Christian church are the very same criticisms present in the Jewish synagogue, and they concern the trustworthiness of the Tanakh and whether or not the events it records actually did take place in real history. Anything which affects both the church and synagogue affects us and cannot be avoided. One of the most significant admonitions, which is frequently overlooked by the Messianic community today, and you know I love you, is seen in Paul's instruction to Timothy. He directed Timothy. Some, having missed the mark, have turned away to fruitless discussion, wanting to be teachers of Torah, even though they do not understand what they keep saying or what they so dogmatically assert. 1 Timothy 1, 6 and 7, Tree of Life version. Why these persons could not be proper teachers of the Torah is clear. They forgot how. The goal of our instruction is love from a pure heart and a good conscience and a sincere faith. 1 Timothy 1, 5, New American Standard. These are the clear imperatives of God's Torah, and as such, Paul placed a significant burden of proof on those who thought they could teach from it. The good apostle said, "We know that the law is good if one uses it lawfully," 1 Timothy 1:8, New American Standard, or legitimately, New Revised Standard, a major part of which is adhering to what it clearly teaches about appropriate human behavior. Have you ever asked yourself the question, can there ever be people who keep the Torah and yet are considered lawless? I know I am asking this question more and more today as I survey the Messianic sphere of influence. Yeshua said to the Pharisaical leaders, "For you are like whitewashed tombs, which on the outside appear beautiful, but inside they are full of dead men's bones and all uncleanness." Matthew 23:27, New American Standard. Precisely because they forgot the greater imperatives of the Torah. Matthew 23:23. We have Messianic people today who focus on small issues of the Torah, yet who forget or even deride the greater issues. Is it possible that they could be practicing an oxymoronic form of Torah lawlessness? Not emphasizing the great ethical and moral imperatives of the Torah, yet being hyper worried about whether one's bag of potato chips has a K or U on it, certainly causes me to wonder. Why do we possibly get incensed when something does not have a rabbinically kosher seal of approval on it, but perhaps tolerate immoral and ungodly attitudes which are disrespectful to the basic humanity of every person? Let us just consider for a moment how many in our faith community have interpreted Yeshua's words. Whoever breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others the same shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever keeps and teaches them, this one shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. Matthew 5:19, New American Standard. I agree that all of the commandments in the Torah have something important to teach us. Okay. But notice what Yeshua said about those who will teach others not to consider the least of the commandments. They will be least in the kingdom of heaven. Elakistos pertains to being the lowest in status, from the BDAG lexicon. It pertains to a status in the kingdom of God, which only God gets to determine. Yeshua said, "The Son of Man will send forth his angels, and they will gather out of his kingdom all stumbling blocks and those who commit lawlessness." Matthew 13:41, New American Standard, something which only he gets to do. Even though the Lord is the only one who determines who gets to into his kingdom or not? Why are there Messianics who seem to appropriate his job and place himself as the judge, jury, and executioner of many Christians? Will all Christians be least in the kingdom? What do such people do about Christian teachers and theologians who appeal for the church to return to the high morality of the Torah? What makes any of us think that we can make the final judgment on a person's soul? Can we really judge a person's eternal salvation with our own limited human abilities? Is it possible that there might be Messianic people, even though they kept things like kosher and the Sabbath, who will be least in God's kingdom because they ignored its weightier commandments? I sincerely hope not. Too much of the Messianic movement today finds itself in a predicament of not understanding. Why do you look at the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye? Matthew 7:3, New American Standard. We may not be the effective movement which we think we are going to be until we get some of our own limitations resolved first. In the Messianic community, we have certainly seen apostasy from the trustworthiness of the apostolic scriptures, New Testament, faith in Yeshua the Messiah, and belief in God himself. We have seen people deny the Lord for a variety of reasons, which often are related to the following which occur when someone enters in. Now, this is just an ad hoc example. Your experience might be different, but I know many of you have encountered this in your congregations and synagogues before. Number one, some people who enter into the Messianic movement feel unwelcomed and unloved, particularly among non-Jewish believers and especially women. Number two, some people who enter into the Messianic movement are taught to feel hatred and vehemence toward others who do not share their convictions about the Torah. Number three, some people who enter into the Messianic movement are taught to reject anything which Christianity teaches, and so they later deny Yeshua's divinity and his messiahship. Number four, not having a firm biblical foundation, not a few of those who deny Yeshua later deny the very existence of God. Some of these things directly relate to the motives, attitudes, and behavior of some voices of influence encountered in the Messianic sphere of influence, and the traits they may foster in those whom they teach. Likewise, the Messianic world has much to answer for in regard to being very much behind the curve in terms of its biblical studies. Yeshua says some very blunt things to many. Whoever causes one of these little ones who believe to stumble, it would be better for him if, with a heavy millstone hung around his neck, he had been cast into the sea. Mark 9:42, New American Standard. Interesting times do lie ahead for the Messianic community, because in the future, new leaders with sound spiritual motives and attitudes will have to emerge, who will help people in faith, and no door will remain closed in how we examine the scriptures and what topics can be discussed. I am very sorry to have to say this, but in this season of development, one of the worst things which could ever have taken place in the Messianic movement has taken place. We commonly refer to ourselves as a fully biblical movement, and many are seen to deride a great deal of the Christian church because it only focuses on the New Testament. Yet, the majority of the Messianic world, probably well over 70%, now practices the reverse error. We only focus on the Torah and largely ignore the prophets and writings of the Tanakh. And we wonder why some Jewish anti-missionaries often seem to understand the Messianic prophecies better than many of us do. Even worse than that, when we do address the Torah, we often only address bits and pieces of it, and most of us consistently fail to interpret the Torah's instruction against its legitimate ancient Near Eastern historical context. We have so much work ahead of us to get us back on the right track. It is not even funny. But we're here to try to offer solutions. We're here to try to help people. We're here to try to stabilize people in their faith and trust in the Lord. So, an answer to apostate trends. Per some of the activities which are occurring in today's Christian church, many evangelical believers are desiring to see change brought to their communities. Whether you realize it or not, there is a great deal of legitimate Christian interest in the Old Testament. Christians today who are true to the scriptures want to know more about the Tanakh beyond that of the prophecies which speak of Jesus. They want to know about the foundational stories and commandments which make up the biblical revelation. Many even want a hands-on and interactive faith, learning about God's salvation history via things like Passover. They want to take on more in regard to their faith. These things all work in the Messianic movement's favor. But how can we see the Messianic movement transition into something useful for the Lord, putting to rest some of the negative trends we currently witness? Whether you are aware of it or not, many Messianic believers are aware of the problems present in our faith community and are desiring to see a different style of Messianic expression emerge in the days ahead. This will be a Messianic movement which is far more mission-oriented, which has a greater appreciation for all of the scriptures, and one in which no person is made to feel excluded. It is a Messianic movement which will be all of the things ancient Israel was commissioned to be, a light to the nations and a kingdom of priests. Isaiah 42:6, Exodus 19:5 and 6. We should all desire to see a Messianic movement come forth, which is fixed and rectified of its various limitations. Yet in order to see this happen, difficult and self-critical things have to be said. We have got to recapture what it means to be a people who can testify to others of our good works and God's wisdom inside of us. Deuteronomy 4:6. Yeshua said in his Sermon on the Mount, "Let your light shine before men in such a way that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven." Matthew 5:16, New American Standard. His teaching, which follows in Matthew chapters 5 through 7, then lists an entire series of issues which have a firm basis in Moses' teaching. Many of these issues are things which today's Messianic movement has forgotten, yet are things which many faithful Christians have observed for centuries. We will be considered least in God's kingdom if we forget these things, if we have yet to apostatize from belief in him. I would suggest that we begin with understanding those words and imploring our Father to mold us into an effective people who can have a positive testimony to the world. But that discussion may be long and protracted as we get closer and closer to the Messiah's return. Now, I bet that some of the things we just discussed, that I just mentioned regarding the great apostasy, you were probably not expecting. Some of you all were doubtlessly expecting, okay, this is what Paul's word, 2 Thessalonians 2, involves. Some of you all were likely expecting a number of the things I communicated about, a number of things witnessed in contemporary evangelicalism, and the dismissal by many of Moses' teaching as relevant instruction. But you probably weren't expecting some self-critical remarks about the Messianic movement and what some of the experiences we have had as a family in the Messianic community over many years have resulted in. Because we've seen a lot of people come in the Messianic door, they get connected to things of Torah. They focus more, though, on outward matters rather than inward heart matters. They can be easily convinced very quickly that Yeshua is not God, he's not the Messiah, and boom, they deny him. And indeed, Preventing apostasy is one of the major jobs of apologetics, because apologetics is the defense of the faith. This is not going to be the last time we discuss apostasy. There's going to be other aspects of it we're going to have to review. It's very uncomfortable to discuss, and it is something which, of course, we're going to be able to see, unfortunately, in greater concentration as we enter into the future. Okay, now let me switch windows again as we prepare to get into our news analysis. Okay, yes, and once again, this is a teaching which I've taken from our ministry book, When Will the Messiah Return? The Dangers of Pre-Tribulationism. Okay, so we always do the news analysis after the theology review, because all the different things we go through with news are time sensitive. They change. News is altered, of course, from day to day. There continue to be various situations we are monitoring in the world at large. Israel and Gaza is, of course, a really big one right now. You probably saw a report about how various Palestinian journalists were killed by the IDF, and then the various conclusions people are drawing from that. We've got the ongoing Russia-Ukraine situation. Of course, we've got a few things going on here at home. Not so much today on that, but yeah, there are a lot of things we are doubtlessly concerned about, and growing anti-Semitism, growing anti-Zionism, how we as Messianic people sort through all of this and note some of the things specifically being talked about. That's going to be difficult as well. All of the news stories I'm about to go through, they will be available for you to peruse when this episode is archived later this afternoon on MessianicApologetics.net. Okay, so our first thing to reference, yesterday, of course, I talked about Christian Zionism was the Scofield Reference Bible, and dispensationalism the main catalyst behind Christian Zionism. And I mentioned my sister Maggie's research project from 2015, part of her master's thesis at the University of Oklahoma, dealing with early Jewish evangelism in the 19th century. She even got to go to Oxford. She contacted me and she said, you need to reference this book to your audience. This will give you a really good overview of Christian Zionism, and simply saying that Christian Zionism, Christian support for a Jewish homeland in the Middle East, the return of the Jewish people to their ancestral promised land, to say it's all dispensationalist proverbial fault is hopelessly simplistic. So a book she referenced to pass on to you, A Short History of Christian Zionism from the Reformation to the 21st Century by Donald M. Lewis. This is a book I have flipped through when visiting her, so I have not read this, but this does go into some of the pre-dispensational causes or factors involving Christian Zionism. Please do not accept the simplistic line, especially as has been carted around by Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, and some of the other influencers out there, that it was solely caused by the Scofield Reference Bible and dispensationalism. That is just not true. So this is a resource my sister Maggie recommends you to look at. A Short History of Christian Zionism from the Reformation to the 21st century. So that implies there were supporters of a Jewish return to their homeland long before Cyrus Scofield took a breath. Okay, our next story. This is from Open Source Intel yesterday afternoon. This has got a lot of people really ticked off. French authorities have denied visa extensions for El Al security staff in Paris. Yeah, now I don't know which security staff are specifically not having their visas renewed. I don't know what their responsibilities or duties are for El Al, but when I was at Messiah 2023, I got to have a few meals with a Messianic Jewish believer from Israel who, guess what, used to work security for El Al at JFK. And one of his responsibilities was to, drive around the airport, drive around JFK, check and make sure everything was where it needed to be. El Al is obviously not the only airline which does this kind of thing, but a lot of people are really ticked off that the French government would do this. Okay, so we talk about apostasy. We talk about the possible role of Islam in the end times, because there is an Islamic problem, an Islamic extremism problem all over the West. It's not just in Western Europe, it's also here in North America. We even have to be aware of some of our surroundings in the Dallas-Fort Worth metroplex. But here in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates, a mosque, church, and synagogue stand side by side in the UAE. Amid instability and conflict across the region, the UAE offers a rare symbol of unity. The Abrahamic family house in Abu Dhabi, not Dubai, brings together a church, mosque, and synagogue in one landmark space. It's not just architecture, it's a message, a bold statement of interfaith respect, shared values, and peaceful coexistence between Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. So we don't fully know how the end times are going to specifically play out because we're human. We can only posit different scenarios based on the information we have today. One possible scenario, which has become really popular over the past 10 to 15 years, the Islamicist scenario, is going to be an Islamic beast, very violent, not too different than the rise of Islam in the 600s. Others are still inclined to believe it's going to be some kind of, we're going to have peace and tolerance, and yes, whether it's, Yahweh, Jesus, Allah, Buddha, we all just need to come together and recognize that all paths lead to the universal consciousness, which is something you kind of detect in a mosque, synagogue, church, side by side. We'll see what happens. A lot of this is dependent on whether the Islamicist wave you see impacting negatively Western Europe and North America is going to be curtailed at all, or whether it's going to continue to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Okay, our next news story, and this is from Open Source Intel yesterday afternoon. Just in, Prime Minister Netanyahu has ruled out any chance of a partial deal. Any deal now must include all hostages. We continue to, of course, ever since this whole conflict began, a little under 2 years ago, we pray every day for the release of the hostages, for the defeat of Hamas, and for this conflict to end as quickly as humanly possible. But we are bearing down on some kind of a point of that, especially with countries which want to recognize an independent Palestinian state. And indeed, I think, as we're going to see later on, the people of Israel many people in Israel, I should say, are growing fatigued of this. Okay, just to slightly change the subject, this is from the New York Post yesterday. We mentioned this earlier. The AOL, America Online, dial-up internet service of the World Wide Web's early days. Some of you all remember that. You remember getting the AOL CDs in the mail. Known for its nostalgic beeps and chirps, is coming to an end on October the 30th. I can't say that I ever used AOL, but I didn't realize it was still around. But yeah, this is a sign that dial-up internet, it's a dinosaur. It's a thing of the past. I haven't used dial-up internet since the year 2000, even though there would be places, of course, when you'd be traveling to have your laptop with you, you would have to dial in. But that, haven't seen that for over 20 years either. By 2004, 2005, this thing called Wi-Fi was in a lot of public places. And I don't even think you can buy a new computer now which has an actual telephone modem in it. I don't think you can really buy a computer now which has a CD-ROM in it. I have to, certainly for me, I've got to use an external CD-ROM if I need to use it at all. So yeah, technology changes, things get faster, things get smaller, and yeah, one of the prophecies is that knowledge will increase. It's from Daniel. This is at least some kind of a road sign that knowledge has been increasing and dial-up. I mean, even in third world countries, which wouldn't have had telephone in some cases, in many parts of the country 25, 30 years ago, yeah, things have definitely changed, and we need to take note of it. Okay, the American home front, Breitbart, yesterday, August 11th. The Washington, D.C. police union is backing President Donald Trump's call to take federal control of Washington, D.C. due to rampant crime. I would definitely continue to expect those on the political left, to say that Donald Trump is becoming a dictator by wanting to enact federal control. At least in this case, it's Washington, D.C. It is the capital of the United States. But we'll wait and see as this unfolds. It hasn't extended out to any other cities yet. We don't know what's going to happen over the next week as the National Guard moves into D.C. From Protestia, you can watch this video. It's a little over a minute, 72 seconds. The Reverend, okay. The Reverend Gordon explains why monogamy isn't for him. Okay. So is he polygamist? And why he and his husband have an open marriage. Oh my. Yeah, this was this show, and I don't. There are a lot of different people right now in liberal Protestantism. They think that gay marriage, LGBTQ is just fine. It's blessed by God. But I remember many years ago, even when I was in seminary and I had to take Romans exegesis, and we spent over 3 weeks on Romans chapter 1. Precisely because of topics like this, homosexuality, gay marriage, ordination of gay clergy. I used to be kind of tongue-in-cheek and say, well, you think that gay marriage is going to be a controversy. Wait till we have the first gay divorce. Well, here, rather than Reverend Gordon and his husband getting a gay divorce, they're just going to have an open marriage. As many partners as we want or we desire, because love is love. Yeah, this is a clear sign of apostasy, unambiguous. All right, some of you all are familiar with Joel Webon. He is the his posts are all over social media. He is a very strong Christian nationalist, patriarchalist type. And he has been saying things in the past year about Israel and the Jewish people, which many have found very disturbing. Well, here are some clips circulating now. Joel Webon's plan to humanly remove Jews from America by pressuring them to self-deport through religious oppression and laws designed to target Joel's favorite anti-Semitic stereotypes. So in his version of Christian nationalism, Jews have no place in America. And so people are picking up that his plan would repeat some of the Nazification of Germany in the 1930s and force Jews to leave. His plan sounds disturbingly like 1930s Germany, which also started out by stripping Jews of their citizenship and oppressing them through hateful propaganda and laws designed to push them to leave the country. Yeah, and now with what has been happening the past 2 years since October the 7th, 2023, you're going to force Jews to leave the United States. Where are they supposed to go? Back to Israel? You don't believe Israel has a right to exist, so where are they going to go? Some uninhabited island in the South Seas, to Antarctica? You're going to put them on the moon? Where the hell are they going to go, Joel Webon? Yeah. From End Time Headlines. Now, this is something we do need to pass along because as strongly as we support Israel in its time of need right now, we need to take notice of how thousands of furious Israelis demand end to Netanyahu's war in Gaza. We're just passing this on as information. It's from thousands of furious Israelis demand an end to Netanyahu's war in Gaza. Now, be aware of how this is happening in the modern state of Israel, which is an open liberal democracy in the largely Islamic Arab Middle East, where you do not have freedom of speech, freedom of expression, the freedom to protest. Okay? So now, look, I've been praying from the very beginning, Lord, let the state of Israel do what it needs to do as quickly as humanly possible, because the patience of the world, and here, even the patience of Israelis, is going to wear thin. But you're not going to see this kind of protesting take place in a lot of Arab or Muslim countries. I'm sorry, you're just not going to see that. So, yes, state of Israel has its flaws. The United States has its flaws. Other countries have their flaws. But here, this could only take place in a liberal democracy. And the people who oppose the state of Israel out there, from the river to the sea, Palestine can be free, that kind of crap, would that kind of protesting be permitted in the state of Palestine? Not a snowball's chance. Tucker Carlson. Okay, so I've got an editorial remark to make. This has been circulating on social media as of yesterday. Mother Agapia Stephanopoulos, she's apparently related to George Stephanopoulos, calls for Christians to stand up against Christian Zionism. You know, when I first saw this, I'm sorry, I just have to say this. You know, this woman has a mustache, okay? And I saw this and my first reaction was, you know, this is the kind of thing which would have been parodied on the old Saturday Night Live. They would have had a man play this woman with a big, giant, burly mustache, and then she would just, you know, make a lot of bumbling remarks about why the Jews are so bad, the Jews this, the Jews that, and the Christians who are taken in by them. Now, more seriously, watch this clip. This Agapia Stephanopoulos, she is a nun. I'm sorry, she's a mother. She's part of the Eastern Orthodox tradition. And she makes the claim. She condemns premillennialism as a heresy, which the church rejected in 381 AD. So that would have been the 4th century. Argues that we are in the millennium now. So I'm going to assume she's amillennial. And that all of this support for the state of Israel, Christian Zionism, and a future millennium, that is very dangerous. That is her conclusion. And it does need to be noted that an amillennial view, which takes the 1,000 years in Revelation as just some abstract symbol of the reign of the Messiah, that has been around for many centuries of Christian history, present in Roman Catholicism, present in Eastern Orthodoxy. It was present by some of the early reformers, and the consistent rejection of premillennialism, that the Messiah returns before his 1,000-year reign on earth. There's going to be a literal reign of the Messiah from Jerusalem, and of course a regathering of the scattered exiles of Israel and the Jewish people, the reason it has frequently been rejected by different theological traditions is because it promotes some kind of Jewish nationalism. And it promotes the idea that God is not finished with Israel proper, the Jewish people. And we can't have that because the church is some new Israel. So, yeah. Tucker Carlson. He's going to have an appointment with the God of Israel before too long. Okay, from Newsmax yesterday. President Trump said he expects to get a quick read on Vladimir Putin when he meets the Russian president, probably the first 2 minutes, and on whether it would be possible to work out a deal to halt the war in Ukraine. Yeah, there's going to be the meeting planned for Alaska on the 15th, so on Friday. The major news outlets are reporting that this will be Putin's first visit to the United States since 2019. Yes, Alaska is part of the United States. And we're going to see what happens. Trump says that, certainly from his business background, he's going to be able to read Putin in the first 2 minutes and know if he's serious about hammering out a peace deal, which can be beneficial for all sides involved. Okay, so some of you all have probably learned by now that there's going to be another Gaza flotilla. And here, of course, we see our favorite activist, Greta Thunberg from Sweden. The Freedom Flotilla announces its intention to set sail again. I think it's going to be sometime in September, and there are going to be a lot of boats involved. This time, dozens of boats coordinated from 44 countries, carrying aid, food, medicine, and doctors. The 18-year seas of Gaza to be broken, opposing Israel, freeing Palestine, supporting humanity. So there's enough of a notification that there's going to be this flotilla trying to reach Gaza. What's going to happen? We'll see. But we know that this is building up pressure in the world against Israel, wanting to force some kind of a resolution to the conflict in Gaza. Did I say I really find that Greta Thunberg is a repulsive human being? I don't say that about a lot of people, but she really is. From Eitan Fischberger, this is also getting a lot of publicity right now, and it has to do with Israel taking out a number of Palestinian journalists. And a lot of people in the media world at large are like, I'm incensed. I'm absolutely disgusted by Israel. Why would the IDF do this? F them, F Israel, blank, 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 blank. You can watch this clip, minute and a half. Eitan Fischberger, jaw-dropping statement from FPA New York President Ian Williams, who said, frankly, I don't care if al-Sharif was in Hamas or not. We don't kill journalists for being Republicans or Democrats or Labor Party. Hamas is a political organization as well as a terrorist organization, perhaps. So if Israel takes out terrorists who also happen to be journalists, let me make sure I get the agency's name, Foreign Press Association doesn't care one way or the other if journalists are associated with organizations which support terror. Okay. Okay. Okay, I thought I should pass this along. This is from X, Karis Rea. I'm not against Israel. I've always liked Israel. Tucker Carlson in his interview last week with Candace Owens. Now, this is something which has got me, as I'm sure it should get you, very, very upset. Okay, so you got Candace Owens. She was one of the first major ones who started coming out against Israel, started entertaining a lot of anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. Now you got Tucker Carlson on the same bandwagon. He's not as bad as Candace Owens, but we see his steady devolution. But here are a number of the theories which you see talked about. Newsflash, Tucker is the ultimate gaslighter. Here are some of the claims he or his guests have made since October the 7th. Now, we're just listing these as information. I'm not going to go through every one. You can look at this on your own time. But this is what gets a lot of people in the Messianic community to pull back from, I don't want to get into any kind of conspiracy theories, because they always, always comes down to the Jews. But yet, because of the spiritual war we are in, we have to know what at least some of them are. We can't just be in a bubble and say, I don't want to hear this. I don't want to hear this. Because people, 4 or 5 years ago in the Messianic community were listening to Candace Owens, and they were listening to Tucker Carlson. So a number of the claims made by Carlson or his guests, according to this, the Mossad carried out 9/11 and assassinated JFK. Jews were kidnapping Christian children in Nazi Germany. Israel is trying to rebuild the third temple. Well, we do know that according to prophecy, and a secret plans for a greater Israel, which would basically be the entire Middle East. That's not the biblical borders of Israel. America is sending its troops to die for Israel. Jews celebrate the deaths of children. Iran wants peace with Israel. October 7th was a false flag attack. And we even see some people like Michael Flynn and Steve Bannon clip on the edges of that too. Stalin was a Jew, so was Ataturk, and Jews are responsible for the Armenian genocide. Elie Wiesel died about being in the Holocaust. Israel is innately demonic and a made-up state with no right to exist. Okay, the Star of David has satanic origins. That is something you encounter in the Messianic community from time to time. Israel oppresses and kills Christians around the world. Israel is deliberately bombing Christian churches and stealing Christian land. Jews are Bolsheviks and Frankists. Israel is ground zero for all conflict in the Middle East. The Talmud is evil and perverted. Israel is running Americans' foreign policy. Jewish supremacy is the greatest threat to mankind. Hitler wasn't as bad as people imagine, and Nazi atrocities are exaggerated. Zionists are warmongering neocons that tricked America into war with Iran. Jews are facilitating homosexuality and illegal immigration in America. Netanyahu created Hamas and Hezbollah. Okay, Zionists control the media and rule Wall Street, and there are a lot of other reasons. Of course, and finally, the Jews killed Christ. U.S. Congress members are forced to pledge loyalty to Israel. Hitler never had a plan for persecuting Jews. Man. And of course, the conclusion drawn by this person, here's the truth. Tucker insists he isn't obsessed with Israel, but out of the 58 episodes of the Tucker Carlson show I counted since 2025, 35 are about Israel or had a segment on it. Okay. Yeah, and this is just, just with what we've gone through, and we'll likely have to discuss many of those things in the future. If you are not upset by some of that and just kind of like, you want to throw up, you want to go take some pills. Yeah, I mean, that is very upsetting and very damning. But these are the kinds of claims we're going to see in increasing detail. We're going to see a repeat of 1930s Germany. We're going to see a repeat of a lot of the anti-Semitic activities of the Middle Ages. And reason, logic, information is going to be frequently lost because there is a demonic and satanic root to all of this, because God's activities on planet Earth center around Jerusalem. They center around Israel and the salvation of the Jewish people. But yeah, Tucker Carlson has gone off the deep end. It's just a question of how deep he's going to go. All right. From Visegrad 24, and this deals more with Russia-Ukraine. Russian forces have broken through Ukrainian defenses north of Pokrovsk. I hope I pronounced that properly. Analysts say the situation on this front segment is critical for Ukraine. There is a catastrophic lack of personnel, and disorganized retreats are leading to Russian breakthroughs. From Build. Now, This is a situation which, of course, changes day to day. This, I believe, falls into the general rubric of wars and rumors of wars, but it does create a lot of global instability. Russia is the world's #1 nuclear power. What's going to happen? We do pray for some kind of an honorable peace to come about, but we know Europe is certainly going to be different when this issue is resolved. And a lot of people have, unfortunately, lost their lives over this. From Charisma, this is from today, August the 12th. Donald Trump as the Antichrist, separating fact from rumors. This is not the last time we have mentioned that, yes, there's some people out there who believe that Donald Trump is the anti-Messiah. I'm not one of those. And by the way, this article doesn't support him as the anti-Messiah either. But looking through, perusing some of the conclusions, some of the factors it sorts through. Of course, it is pre-trib, talks about the church as the restrainer, the church being removed via the pre-trib rapture. We're actually going to discuss the issue of restrainer probably tomorrow. Be one of the last things we do with post-trib for a little while. But here it talks about geographical and prophetic details. According to this article, Scripture indicates that the Antichrist emerges from a revived Roman Empire, a Mediterranean-centered confederation of 10 kings. Donald Trump is a Gentile Czech, but he doesn't come from Rome. No such 10-nation bloc presently rules, and Trump has only led one nation. Okay, now this is where I have to pause and say, no, I don't believe Trump is the beast. It's frequently concluded that the 10 toes of Daniel's statue represent a revived Roman Empire. That's how it's been interpreted by many people. Is that absolutely required? No. There are some who have said, well, what we consider most of the Arab or Muslim world, that was part of the old Roman Empire geographically, so maybe that's it. Likewise, if you're talking about a quote-unquote revived Roman Empire, what about all of the areas where the old, Roman provinces have colonized? So that could involve, I don't know, North America, Australia, New Zealand. There's nothing which requires it to be Mediterranean-based. And by the way, you don't know what the final quote-unquote revived Roman Empire or 10-toed power is actually going to be. I've seen claims that it's going to be the European Union. I'm seeing it's going to be the successor to the United Nations. It's going to be something else we don't even know about yet. So don't discount areas beyond the old Roman Empire proper. But no, I don't believe it is Donald Trump. And then finally, from Open Source Intel, and I got this right as I was preparing for today, Egypt has stepped in to mediate between Israel and Hamas after talks in Doha collapsed, hosting a Hamas delegation in Cairo to discuss a proposed single-phase deal that would release all hostages in the war, demilitarize Gaza, exile some Hamas members, and revive a 60-day ceasefire with prisoner exchanges and full humanitarian aid. Okay. Again, this is a situation which changes from day to day. I do believe that the best people to solve this are the people in the Middle East. And if you were a non-believer, a secular person, you believe Israel is a right to their ancestral homeland, but they're going to have to make concessions that they don't want to, but they can still continue to be. A lot of people would consider this fairly reasonable. We're going to get rid of Hamas. We're going to get most of Hamas. We're going to demilitarize it. We're going to return the hostages. We're going to enter a 60-day ceasefire, and then we're going to start to have some of those really tough discussions, probably involving a two-state solution. I'm sure that is the logic behind a lot of this. We know that we are on the heels next month of the fall high holidays coming. And so with that, as it occurs every single year, there's going to be a high prophetic expectation. Some of the things I've just gone through regarding growing anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism, your local Messianic congregation, synagogue, fellowship, Bible study group, whatever, you all need to be praying about this kind of stuff, because you're going to be encountering it in increasing detail out there in the world of ideas. This is why we study history. It's why we learn from the Middle Ages, why we learn from the Second World War and the causes behind it. And we're probably beginning to see these things repeat themselves. And they're uncomfortable. They're offensive. They are road signs. We do need to stay grounded. This could just be another phase that blows over in the next couple of years. But we have reason to pay attention, and pay attention closely, and to appeal to God for his ongoing protection and his ongoing mercy toward us. Because as I concluded our teaching on the Great Apostasy, I believe that today's Messianic community has a very significant role to play in the last days leading up to Yeshua's return. We often don't understand it sometimes. Sometimes it can actually be a little scary, because it means we're going to make ourselves a target, perhaps, for criticism, definitely, for verbal assaults, absolutely. But yeah, nobody said the return of the Messiah was going to be something easy. And it's something which we do have in front of us. Now, I wear glasses. I'm not always sure how close or how far away it is, but we're definitely one day closer today than we were yesterday. We do need to be careful and not speak presumptuously, but we also need to be on guard, and we need to stay informed. All right. As always, on behalf of Outreach Israel Ministries and Messianic Apologetics, I would like to sincerely thank you for your ongoing prayers, encouragement, and donations toward all of our ministry efforts. You can give online at outreachisrael.net/support. We'll see you again tomorrow with another episode of Messianic Insider. Until then, may God bless you, shalom, and take care.